Hey guys, it's Rachel from the Lorraine Lamb. It is another Top 5 Wednesday day. Today's topic is Top 5 Second Books. The Top 5 Wednesday group will be linked in the down bar. It'll be the first link, so you can go check out the group page, see what other people are posting, or join in on the fun. So basically, this list comprises sequels, and kind of my criteria for this. I'm definitely missing some because there's so many good sequels, but more often than not, there's a lot of bad sequels. I just, like the second book slump, like we all know about it on BookTube. We've heard everybody talk about it. But this is I really like this topic because it's rewarding the great sequels. Because sometimes they go for a slump and the third book gets better, but it's really great when you have a second book that's really strong. Avi. Number 5 is A Night In with Marilyn Monroe by Lucy Holiday. This is the second book in the A Night In With series, and yet I haven't finished this trilogy. I haven't finished the third book, but the second book I found picked up where the last one went. It is kind of a formulaic book because in the first book, the main character has visions of Audrey Hepburn. In this one, it's Marilyn Monroe. So it's a formulaic book, and it's with the same main character, but it was done so strongly, and this just fit into the series seamlessly. Like, it did not feel like a second book. Yes, there's some heartbreaking moments, but that's because there was drama in this book and not because of the book itself. This was such a strong sequel. I really enjoyed it, and it definitely fit in with the series. It didn't feel like it was, detached or in a slumpish Number 4 is P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han, the sequel to All the Boys I Loved Before, and this is the second book in the trilogy. I actually just read this recently, and the first book, the first time I read it, it was really hard for me to get into, and then Steph asked me if I wanted to buddy read the first book, and I agreed to that because I really want to get back into the series, and I obviously like doing buddy reads with my friend. And yeah, so basically, read the first book. I enjoyed it way more than I did the first time because I DNF'd it the first time. I was going to go back to it. But yeah, for the time being. Read that, really liked it. But then I read this one, and I liked this even more. And the fact that the first book I didn't like a lot the first time around, I read most of it, not all of it. Not most of it, really, 70 pages. And I didn't really like it. Then I read it again. Really liked it, and then I really like this more. I feel like this book really hits its stride in this book. You know all the characters, you know what they're like. It makes a lot more sense. You're getting used to their personalities because they all have very vivacious personalities in the first book, so it can be hard to kind of distinguish and get used to these characters. Number 3 is Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This is the second book of the Hunger Games trilogy. And yes, this book is my favorite book in the Hunger Games series, and a lot of people feel the same way, it seems, from what I've been hearing about BookTube, around BookTube, and I just really enjoy this book. I think that you have the formula from the first book, and it's adapted into this book, and you get I really love the whole, yeah, this could be a spoiler a bit, but I'm sure everybody knows. You get the whole new Hunger Games setup, which I find is very intricate and very interesting, and even more so than the first book, and you don't get as much information at the beginning of the book, where it's like the first book they have to, set it up and go on and on and on. It gets kind of right to the point and a more intricate stadium, and I think it's just done very well. I didn't really like the third book of the Hunger Games series when I originally read it. I haven't reread it since I've seen the movies because I did like all the movies, but second movie and the second book were really good, phenomenal. It's great. I wish I could put it up higher in this list, but you'll see why in a second. Starting with number 2, The Lost World by Michael Crichton. Now, I read this year, the whole thing through, because I'd started a few years ago, but then put it down. Not because of it, but because of my mood. And this is a sequel to Jurassic Park. And Jurassic Park, if you guys don't know, which I don't, if you've been watching some of my videos, you probably know, is my favorite movie franchise. It's just I have so much love for those films, and I'm not even going to get into it because I could rant all day long. Trust me. I've made up so many videos I should do about it. And basically, read the sequel, and the first chapter is oh, I'm not really enjoying this that much. After that, it flew by. I was reading this whenever I got the chance to. I think it's such a strong sequel. Not only does it set up, it doesn't really follow along, it follows along kind of from the last book, but it's not directly, it follows different characters. How it's set up is so good that even though Jurassic Park and The Lost World are so different, they fit together so well, and I absolutely adored it, and I could not stop gushing about that book. I absolutely adore it, and I wish I could move that one up soon, well, it's already number 2, but I wish I could move that one up too, but it's got to stay at number 2. And finally, number 1, which should come to no surprise to most people that watch this channel regularly, I picked Flawless by Sarah Shepard, the sequel to Pretty Little Liars. And the reason I picked this one as my number one slot, which I hemmed and hawed a bit whether to put it in number one, was because I thought this was the first book in the series. I originally read this whole book and then realized that I didn't read the first book. And then I had to go back, but by that point I read the third, fourth, and then I went back to the first. Something like that. And like, because when I was younger, because I started reading these books when I was in 7th grade, and I didn't know, like, the 5th book had just come out, or it was soon coming out, something like that. And they didn't have the first book in my bookstore, like, local one, because it was a smaller chain, or a smaller store in the chain, so yeah. Didn't have the first book, and I read this one and then realized that was a sequel. So I really like this one because not only, like, after reading the sequel, not only does it continue on with the story, but it can stand alone, which I think is important. Well, like, it's important to me, like, I like the second book that can stand alone, because let's say there's a trilogy and the third book's coming out. If the Pretty Little Liars series was a trilogy, like in the third book, yeah, it was coming out, you could read this and not read the first book, and that saves time. But yeah, I absolutely love the Pretty Little Liars series. It's always going to have a special place in my heart. I know it gets a lot of flack for being a long series and yada yada, but I enjoy it for what it is, and I have so much, like, it was with me for a long part of my life, from 12 to, like, 20. So, yeah. Always could be my favorite sequel, because it didn't spark my love for reading, because trust, I've been loving reading since before I could read, but it, like, just got me more into a fandom. Like, it sparked that interest where I was, like, into a fandom. So yeah, I'm gonna stop ranting though, because now I want to reread all these books. So this is the problem with talking about books. You just want to reread them, but there's never enough time. But I need to make that more of a priority. So enough about me and that. I'm gonna let you guys go, so I'll see you guys later. Bye.